Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting us to come and speak to your group. I feel like I have a lot in common running county government with those of you that run local government in our cities and towns. Since you gave an overview of a little bit of my background, I just want to tell you what's critically important for me is that we bring integrity back to the state auditor's office. And it is about leadership. It's all about leadership. And it's about proven management experience at the executive branch level. That's what I do. That's what I do every day. And I think we need to put our trust in the next state auditor to be able to hit the ground running, to know how to manage 400 employees. Like it was just reported, I have 3,000 employees in Pierce County and a very large budget. So I like to tell people that I've been trusted, I've been tested, and I'm transparent. I think those are critically important characters and abilities that the next state auditor has to have. I think what we tend to do in government, and I've been in government for a while, is that we struggle with these issues and we don't collaborate as much as we can, but it's organizations like this that really does help to bring that collaboration. And I want the state auditor's office to do the same thing. So not only to bring integrity back to the state auditor's office, but it's critically important for me to put in some new measures of what the state auditors can do in order to relate to the stakeholders that they work with, whether it's local government, from the small municipalities to large counties like myself, to state agencies as well. Anyone who has public dollars needs to have oversight. I do, you do. It's the nature of what we do in order to provide confidence to the public we all serve. I think, and I say very often, that we do more good in public government than we do bad. But there are times where you do need that outside review. You need to have a watchdog oversee everything that we do, from the work that I do in Pierce County government to the work you do in local government. And that's a good thing because it does provide confidence in the public in government. And today, and in particular today, I think people have a very bad feeling about government, and it may be unfounded, and it could be because we don't tell our story as much as we could or should, and I think the state auditor can play a role in that. One of the questions, and I don't know if we want to go to questions, but one of the questions that was asked had to do with the professionalism of local government audit staff. I've sat in more exit conferences and entrance conferences than either of us in this race for state auditor. And so I understand that question. I understand that there are times where we have turnover in the state auditor's office. It's almost like a training office for those that are coming out of the educational institutions. And some of us in local government, like myself and many of you in this room, swoop up those state auditors and bring them into our own jurisdictions to help provide that oversight internally for our internal operations. So I've had hands-on experience with guiding staff to customer-focused professionalism. I like hearing, and I've been told that AWC partnered with the SAO for a City 101 training. I think that's great. I think it's creative. I think we need to do more of those kinds of things. I think retaining, and this may speak to a little question that you had for my opponent, training and retention of staff, ongoing meetings at local and state governmental conferences and meetings are critically important. As county executive, I want you to know I meet with my mayors every month. I invite the mayors of every jurisdiction and their administrators to come in and make a presentation to all the department heads in Pierce County so we can know how we're working well together and what we can do to make improvements. I will bring those same kinds of things into the state auditor's office because we have a lot of stakeholders across the state that interface, of course, with the state auditor's office. And so I think what's really critically important is that we have to make sure that we're realistic on what those promises can be and what the things that we can do with regards to making sure that we reduce the turnover at the state auditor's office. And it really is about retention. It is about training of our employees. We call it in Pierce County talent management. How do we elevate our staff? How do we encourage them to want to stay in our governmental agencies? And part of it is their salaries and ensuring that they have an equitable salary that doesn't recruit them out of the state auditor's office. And they have made some improvements, some very microscopic improvements on the salaries of employees in the state auditor's office. But it's also about training and opportunities for growth and development. That's how you do retain staff in the state auditor's office.
All right. Thank you. So we'll move on to the questions. You were just about to begin answering some of the questions we gave you in advance, and so thank you for that. I'll pose the same questions that were asked to the previous candidate. So moving forward with that, Washington State voters again have given the State Auditor's Office the authority to fund the conducting of independent performance audits to ensure that local government programs are effective and efficient in their function. Particularly in consideration of cities, however, what are your thoughts on how performance audits could best be used to better support local government functions? And would you be open to collaborating with local governments on future topics as well?
You bet. So I hope I'll get to all the answers to all those specific parts of the question. Basically, the next state auditor needs to make a case for the value of performance audits. When I was first county executive elected in 2009, I met with our former state auditor, Brian Sontag, to actually invite his performance audit team to come in and do an audit of Pierce County government. I will tell you, my department heads were a little bit taken aback by this move, but it was really great, and it was wonderful, and we learned a lot. Since then, after that first invitation, our Public Works and Utilities Division invited the State Auditor's Office to come in and do a performance audit. And then in 2014, we had our HR department. So I really have some experience of actually inviting the State Auditor's Office to come in and do performance audits. You know, from my point of view, they're a tool in the toolbox. They're not a silver bullet. If you expect that you're going to do a performance audit and everything's going to change overnight, that's just not realistic in my experience. So we need to be realistic. We need to provide good tools. It's my understanding the State Auditor's Office did about, since they've started the performance audit program, they've done about 8,000 performance audits for staff training, and about 300 jurisdictions. So they've been on the road, and many of you across the jurisdictional lines, across the different levels of government, have reached out to the state to ask them to come in and do performance audits. Whether it's like in my county where we're doing balanced scorecard and lean, there are all sorts of different kinds of performance management tools that are good to use in your toolbox. It really, from my perspective, it has to be centered around what works for you in your local jurisdiction. And I would be very supportive of listening to what's working and what's not working between local government and state government, quite frankly, and the State Auditor's Office. I guess the distinction I would like to make is that my opponent is singularly focused on baldrige, and it's one tool, but there are many tools that jurisdictions can use.
All right, thank you. So you mentioned, as you were speaking right there, about the fact that training and technical assistance is important. Are you saying then, as state auditor, you would continue to support cities in getting the training and technical assistance that they would need?
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, what I can do in Pierce County government, large governmental agency, 3,000 employees, a $900 million budget, is woefully different than what you could do in TWISP. And so we know that there's a difference between size, between jurisdictions, between the needs of what one jurisdiction may need and another jurisdiction. And so I think we need to tailor those support services and really look at how we're deploying those services across the state of Washington. And I am like the collaboration that's been done to date, but I think we can do more.
Okay, thank you. The State Auditor's Office, as you know, recently completed a public records study providing the first comprehensive overview of the daunting amount of resources local government agencies are required to dedicate to the compliance for the Public Records Act. As State Auditor, would you see the SAO continuing to work on Public Records Act issues? And if so, do you envision this work to include working with cities to address the concerns that we have pertaining to both compliance and the tracking of its impacts?
Absolutely, and we deal with this in Pierce County government just like you in your local jurisdictions across the state of Washington. I think we need clear rules. I do think that the way we communicate with our constituents, our citizens, has changed radically. That can be helpful for us in delivering on that transparency that we're all striving for. All of us in government want to be open and transparent. We want the public to trust what we do with their tax dollars. That's the lion's share of what the state auditor does. It really does the financial audits of the state of Washington. Performance audits is that value added, where it really gives you some tools in which you can make some course corrections, you can do some strategic planning, you can do some efficiency work in your regulations and your rules and your permitting. I do like the idea of partnering with the the Municipal Research Services Center. I know the Secretary of State's office did partner in doing some training. So local folks who've been elected know what the rules of the engagement are with regards to how you meet, when you meet, how we're transparent. I think there are new ways we can be proactive in communicating with the public that can maybe get us out of this business where we're constantly having the public request more and more. Sometimes they're our own employees as well. And so in a way, we can be able to be as more transparent as possible. I know we've put a number of things in place in Pierce County government, and I think we can provide those best practices. Some of you across this room have done some really tremendous things of being able to be disclosing of how you provide the services that you provide, how your records are kept, and I think we need to take those best practices and share them with each other. I know you do a measure of that here. I know the state county auditors do the same thing. They too share a lot of their best practices. So I know a lot of different groups within state and local government do work very hard to try and provide that transparency. But it is something that I know, it depends on your jurisdiction, it is a burden. It's something that it requires staff to create those documents, but we have to stay diligent on it because it's incredibly important for the public to have confidence in our organizations across the state of Washington, and the state auditor should be an enabler to help you do that body of work.
Okay, thank you. Sometimes cities disagree with the outcomes in their audit process. So, as state auditor, how will you ensure that their concerns are heard?
Well, first of all, I think you need to reach out at the front end. I would intend as the new state auditor to reach out to all the different stakeholder groups to really listen and hear from you what's working, what's not working. After that, having said that, I think there is something to be said about that outside set of eyes that comes in and looks at our financial records, to look at our internal controls. You know, we do the best we can, but sometimes we have fraud, sometimes we have misuse of funds in our jurisdictions, and we need to shine the light on that. Having said that, I think how we do that book of business, how we interact with each other is critically important, but I think that we need to make sure that those opinions stand on their merit because even if I, as the county executive, maybe take exception to what the audit comes out with on a particular issue in my government, I think it's an outside set of eyes that reviews how we do our book of business. Can we do things more collaboratively and really have that give and take? In my experience in dealing with the state auditor's office, during that process of having a financial review, you do have a tremendous amount of give and take. And in fact, your staff, just like my staff, are the ones that really provide the information. So there is a tremendous give and take during that process. Can we streamline the process? I think the state auditor needs to practice exactly what they expect you to do, and that is be as efficient and as effective in their operations and their practices as we're asking, as the state auditor's office would be asking of you.
All right, thank you. Final question is, again, regarding homelessness. How do you see local governments utilize state funds to address the issue surrounding homelessness?
So your question has to do with state funds?
Yes, how do you see local governments utilize state funds to address the issues surrounding homelessness?
So many of you, in fact, all of you, I would be surprised if there's anyone in this room that hasn't struggled with the challenge of homelessness and the challenge of some of the lack of housing in our communities for low-income folks. we've been having this conversation in Pierce County for quite a while. We have strategies, we have ideas, but quite frankly, in county government, it takes a revenue stream to be able to do that. Let me tell you, I have a close to $290 million discretionary budget that the county council and I discuss on a regular basis. That's the money that we get to play with. 80% of it goes to public safety and the criminal justice system in Pierce County. There is very little money left over for the human services, for the support services. So we have to be creative. We have to collaborate. We have to find partnerships. We don't provide in Pierce County government direct services, but we can provide partnerships. But we have to do that with funding streams that will help to support that. I think you would feel the same way. To provide those wraparound services, it's critically important to have the funding to do that. In Pierce County, we're one of the few counties, much to my chagrin, that has not passed a 0.1%. It won't solve all the problems, but it will help to mitigate some of those services that we need to provide in our county. You just have to read our local paper to know that communities within Pierce County, it's just not endemic in Pierce County and in unincorporated Pierce County, but it is in our cities and towns. So everyone's working very hard to find solutions to these problems and these issues. But homelessness, lack of housing are huge for all of us. It's endemic across the United States. I was not recently, but a few months back in Hawaii, and the headline on the paper in Kauai said, "We need to deal with our homeless issue here." So it's something that we're all dealing with. I think we do need state funding to help support that, but there are a lot of, as you know, challenges for those state dollars. So we need to be creative, we need to be specific, and we need to be able to address those issues. Let's talk about what the state auditor could do, though. Let me tell you, I do not believe that a performance audit is the answer to the solution of solving homelessness. It may be something that we could do to improve the operations and the efficiencies of how we function, but it is not the silver bullet that I think is being pronounced by my opponent. So I really think there are challenges that we're all facing, and homelessness is one and drug addiction and those issues. I've collaborated with the two local major hospital organizations, Multicare and Franciscans, on a project to provide a mental health hospital in Pierce County to alleviate some of the fact that we have folks suffering from mental health that are in our Pierce County jail. So we need to get them out of the jail. We need to move them into the appropriate places that they need to be. Some of those folks are homeless. Some of those folks have drug addiction and problems with addiction. So there's a whole number of strategies that need to be deployed.
Thank you. This concludes the questioning. However, is there anything remaining that you would like to add as a final comment, or anything else you would like to discuss?
Sure. Leadership matters. Experience matters. Running a large agency matters. I don't want to take the risk for the next state auditor not to be a proven and tested leader. I'm the person in between the two of us that will provide that kind of experience and background that will provide the state a good path forward with regards to how we deal with keeping accountability in local and state government. I do that in my own county, and I will take those same skills and ability. But this is about leadership. It's about hiring good people to go out and do the work that is done in local and state government. But this is about leadership matters, and I'm the right person, I believe, to be the next state auditor.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.